Hi there. This is a homily for the 33rd Sunday of the year. As you know, there are 34 Sundays in the year, so next Sunday will be the Feast of Christ the King, and that brings the liturgical year to its conclusion, and then we start the season of Advent. Now, these readings, this is 33rd Sunday now, start off with something that is very much tied to the relationship between husband and wife, and that comes from Proverbs. And then in the Gospel, we have the parable of the servants who are given different values of talents, and then they have to do something with them. And then the master judges each one of them according to what they've done. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to treat this homily as a homily on marriage itself, on the Catholic understanding of marriage. And so if we start with Proverbs, this is Proverbs 31, you find that there's this wonderful hymn about the worthy wife. Her husband entrusts his heart to her. She brings him good and not evil. And then it goes through all the works of the worthy wife. And finally, an injunction to the husband, give her a reward for her labors. Kind of a loaded picture, very much time conditioned too, of the role of the wife in the marriage. But in fact, if you read Proverbs with the other texts on marriage, and of course the most massive text on marriage is in Genesis and then again in Ephesians 5, you will find that what this tells us here fits in with what we find from the other theories of marriage. And when I say theory, I don't mean, well, this is just an option. This is God's created way of uniting a man and a woman so that something extraordinary happens. A little tiny bit of that extraordinariness comes out in that line, her husband entrusts his heart to her, and he has an unfailing prize. He knows that he has got somebody who is really a counterpart in his life in the world. And you've got to flip that round. If you read Mulieris Dignitatem, Familiaris Consortio, and so on, you find that John Paul II was very clear that you've got to flip these images around. So, in fact, the one who finds a worthy husband, his value is beyond pearls. Her, or his wife, entrusts her heart to him and has an unfailing prize. There's got to be that valuing of the relationship between the man and the woman. There's just no other way to perceive of marriage. All the things about marriage of convenience, for example, marriage so that money stays in the family, all these abuses of marriage essentially are basically put aside by this very personal relation that you have this male person and the female person finding a lot of themselves by their relationship to each other. And so when you go through the works of the wife, that's just again one side of the coin. She may have hundreds of other works that she is doing. The one that will stick out in any analysis of marriage, she reaches out her hands to the poor and extends her arms to the needy. And again, one has to flip that because he, the male in the marriage, has to extend his hands to the poor and his arms to the needy as well. Moving on then, we have this Psalm 128, and here you have this celebration again of marriage. from the husband's point of view, but again, that doesn't restrict it. Your wife shall be like a fruitful vine in the recesses of your home. The fruitfulness of the female is just absolutely not possible to get away from. Very clumsy sentence, but you can't get away from it. It's too present, too real, and too beautiful to denigrate as we do in our society. All the denigration of being a mother, all the denigration literally of being a female woman as opposed to being a woman who's taking on male characteristics. And if you look at some of the most successful women, and I mean CEOs of major corporations, you will find that they are feminine. They know that they no longer have to fake it like being a man. And you can see it in the best figures that come out. Then the other way to look at this is to look at the female leaders in the church, the various people who have started religious orders and so on. And most often, if you take Teresa of Avila as just one example, she's a very feminine woman, but she started this massive movement of conversion that still continues today. Moving on then, you have the man, behold is the man blessed who fears the Lord bless you from Zion, may you see the prosperity of Jerusalem. This again should be applied to both man and woman, and what you have here is, may you have a blessed future, because you are living your relationship, your part of the relationship, to the full. And in my case, she, the wife, is living her relationship to the full. Both of you, the husband and the wife, the male and the female, in the marriage, and this is sacramental marriage now, will have a glorious future. They will see the prosperity of Jerusalem. All these metaphors are used for the sheer richness of the future of the married couple. And it's all because, if you dig into John Paul II, and people like Hans Urs von Balthasar and so on, they are discovering their counterpart, which means they're discovering themselves. And a big part of that themselves is that they are faithful. They follow the love of God and also the law of God, and in the process, of course, live a full life. The second reading is about the end times. No surprise, we had the similar thing last week, and of course this is all pointing to the next Sunday, which is going to be the Feast of Christ the King. So I'm not going to deal with that. I'll go immediately into the Gospel, and in the Gospel, this is Matthew 25, you have Jesus teaching this parable. A man going on a journey calls his servants, entrusts possessions to them, and here we've got to start seeing ourselves, but particularly man and woman in Catholic marriage, because in fact a man in marriage has been entrusted first of all with life, secondly with a wife, and thirdly with a family, and basically his wife too, she has been entrusted with her life. If she didn't have a life, we wouldn't be talking about her. She has been entrusted with a husband, and she's been entrusted with a family. And both of them have been entrusted with work in the world, whatever that happens to be. This is where it gets complicated, explaining the theology of laity, because there are so many varieties of lay life that are following the rules of God, and of course being loved by God in the process, and as a result are living to the point where they will see the prosperity of Jerusalem, to take a line out of the first reading. Anyhow, you know the story as well as I do. These servants then come back to the master. You gave me 5 talents, I made 5 more. Well done, you good and faithful servant. Since you are faithful in small matters, I will give you great responsibilities. This thing about being faithful in small matters, great responsibilities, really applies to Catholic marriage, where the man and the woman both have, first of all, fidelity. We're not talking about people who are not faithful to God. And secondly, we're talking about them faithful in the very specific sense of living out this marriage, which is going to be, and we learn this from places like Ephesians 5, that this marriage is going to be a concrete image of the marriage between Christ and his church. Very important that, because a lot of people in the world are never going to encounter the Catholic Church. However, they may well encounter a Catholic man married to a Catholic woman, and he and she are both living out their faithful life. That may be the first image, and hopefully a very good image, of what the church actually is, the marriage between Christ and his church. Then you get to the other side of it. You've got people who are the last servant who gets one talent, and he buries that talent in the ground. Now, as far as married couples are concerned, married couples quite often, unfortunately, waste their talents. The first talent that they have is life and love. And if they're not finding out what those two things mean for me and for my wife, in my case, then they are going to literally pull their marriage down and therefore not produce the fruitfulness of marriage, which should be a joy most of the time for the man and the woman. Secondly, you have that not only is he hiding his talent, but in fact, he's hiding the master's talent. Because again, we're not given marriage just for ourselves. God has literally given us his life and said, okay, let's see what you can do with this. And he's taught us his love, so can we be loving in our marriage? And then can we serve the world in all the normal ways that serving the world involves? And so with that very rushed reflection on marriage, I wish you a really good week. Take care.